One day I'm gonna be everything I wanna be. I don't let it get the most of me. One day I'm gonna be free. I wanna be everything I'm gonna be. My future right in front of me. One day I'm gonna be free. I wanna be free. Then let me be free. One day I'm gonna be free. Mentally and physically, emotionally and spiritually. One day I'm gonna be free. I'm standing at the crossroads. I'm feeling like a lost soul. Don't know where I wanna go, but all I know is I wanna be free. They telling me to let it be, but that just ain't in me, no. Jealousy and envy, but all I see is I wanna be free. See everything I wanna be, exactly what I'm gonna be. Don't let it get the most of me. Eventually, I'm gonna be free. See everything I wanna be, exactly what I'm gonna be. Yeah. One day I'm gonna be free. I'm gonna be free. Let me be free. One day I'm gonna be free. Mentally and physically, emotionally and spiritually. Yeah. One day I'm gonna be free. I told them take their aim off me. Stop trying to get a name off me. If they would just let me be, I'm gonna be free. I told them take them chains off me and throw away the locks and keys. If they would just let me be, eventually I'm gonna be free.
Of June 9, 2024, Saudi Arabia has officially withdrawn from the decades-long petro-dollar agreement. This marks a significant shift in global economics. The decision follows Saudi Arabia's refusal to renew a crucial U.S.-Saudi security agreement set to expire today under the leadership of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. This move grants Saudi Arabia the freedom to sell oil and other commodities and currencies beyond the U.S. dollar, such as the RMB, euros, yen, and yuan. This decision challenges the dominance of the petrodollar system, which has been in place since the U.S. abandoned the gold standard in 1972 with the collapse of the Bretton Woods system. With the potential for oil transactions to occur in different currencies, the process of de-dollarization is expected to accelerate, reshaping the global financial landscape. This monumental shift could have far-reaching implications for international trade, investment, and economic stability as the world adjusts to a new financial order. What do you think about this significant change in the way oil is purchased in the Middle East?
What's going on, Aaron? What's going on, brother?
Oh, almost having nightmares over this situation, my man.
Man, I tell you what. Yeah, we're gonna dive into a lot of this stuff here in just a few minutes. But before we get started, what up, though? What up, everybody? We got a special show for you this evening. It is something that, as we've been talking about in the past weeks, a lot of this stuff, we've been playing connected dots with a lot of this stuff that's been going on. And it wasn't predetermined that that's what we was going to do. It's just kind of how it all happened. Like you ran into one, which led to something else, which led into something else, and you just started connecting the dots with everything that's really been going on here. Now, this one here is actually one of the most detrimental ones out of all of the ones that we've been talking about, because this here is going to be the precursor that starts everything else that we've been talking about. So what we're talking about here is the petrodollar. Okay. And a lot of you may not know what the petrodollar is, but basically what it is that if I'm not mistaken, Henry Kissinger made this agreement in 74. Was it correct?
That's correct.
Okay. It was in 74 that Henry Kissinger made this agreement with the Saudis, basically making it to where the U.S. currency was the only currency that could be used to purchase oil. And in exchange for that, the U.S. provided military backing for that whole region to make sure that no other countries or nobody else would actually come in that would try to infiltrate Saudi Arabia or interfere with their oil. So this was an agreement that was done in 74, and it was a 50-year agreement. So on June 9th, if I'm not mistaken, that agreement came to an end. Now, most people will say, well, okay, well, they knew this agreement was coming to an end, so why didn't they just go ahead and have something already in place? So when that one ended, another one would pick up. Well, that's good thinking, but that's not what happened. So now you have the Saudis saying, well, no, let's not do that anymore. I'm not interested in doing it anymore. We're going to open it up to where anybody can use any currency and buy this oil now. The oil and or commodities that's coming out of Saudi Arabia. Now, if that takes place, that actually hurts the dollar, because you have all these countries that has throughout the years has had so much money in their reserve of US dollars that was used primarily for purchasing oil. Now that they don't have to use American dollars and they can use their own, what happens now? So that's what we're going to get into today. So Aaron in with me this evening. We've been talking heavily about this since yesterday, and but we're going to dive into this and try to give everybody a understanding as to what all took place prior to, which brought us to this point, and what could happen after this point. So, Aaron, once again, thanks for coming on with me, man. I know you went through and you've done a lot of research on this as well. So, why don't you give everyone a brief history lesson as to how this came about?
Okay. As your video alluded to, the Bretton Woods Conference, that happened in 1944. It was close to the end of World War II. A lot of countries were war torn. People were starving. People were desperate for relief. And the United States came forward, kind of did a little power grabbing, and they got everyone to agree, at least 43 nations that signed up for it, to agree that the United States dollar would be the world currency. And at the same time, only the United States would be able to print that dollar. Also at that conference, the formation of the World Bank was started, as well as the International Monetary Fund. That way, countries could borrow money to rebuild their nations, basically.
Mhm.
So because they were desperate for that, people jumped at the opportunity. And it was because of the depressions that they was living through, starvation, the hard times. It would have been hard pressed for someone not to accept that answer of relief being offered to them. Then you jump forward, like you said, on Sunday, the 9th, the petrodollar agreement expired. Now that agreement was only in place for was a contract between the Saudis and the United States for 50 years that only Saudi oil could be purchased in US dollar. Now we was already the world currency, so that wasn't that hard of a stretch to do. But then other nations began to see that and they jumped on board. You got countries that maintained almost billions of dollars in reserve in US dollars to be able to purchase oil. And people need to understand oil is the most demand product in the world. There's nothing in demand more than oil. So that's the reason why they kept US dollars on hand to be able to purchase it with, which gave us a certain amount of power. Because if we put sanctions or something against you, we didn't have to let you get any of our money, purchase any of our money. So knowing how bad they need that oil, people was willing to go along to get along. Now, in 72, we went off the gold standard. President at that time was Nixon. And it was realized at that point we had nothing back in our money except for the full force of the U.S. military. So Henry Kissinger, which was Secretary of State, he negotiated that deal in 74 with the Saudis in a partnership. But now that that partnership is over with, I say there's hard times coming to the United States. So as far as history goes, I'm gonna stop at that point right now.
You know, based on that agreement that that Kissinger had with the Saudis, and like I said, it was the agreement to where all the oil was purchased with the U.S. dollar, and in exchange, they would have full military backing, and the U.S. is actually has a lot of bases in that area that does just that, just to keep Saudi Arabia safe. Now, you would think, in one sense, that's kind of like a smack in the face, because we've been defending you for all these years to keep everybody at bay, to keep them from messing with you, and then now all of a sudden, when it comes time for this to be redone, now you don't want to do it. So now I understand that, yes, it's going to take a toll on the U.S., but also, what happens if the U.S. say, well, okay, well, since you're not going to do this, then we're just going to pull all our bases and just let you deal with it on your own. Because from what I've looked up, if Saudi Arabia had to build a military to be able to protect their interests, they would have to spend over $100 billion a year just to do that. So it's kind of like, which one would you rather do? Would you rather keep the agreement the way we have it, or I just pull all my stuff and you defend yourself, and whatever happens to you happens to you? You know what I mean? Because surely you can't expect that you're going to pull out of a deal and then still expect me to protect you as well. You agree?
I agree with that. Then I'm also going to add to it, on June 10th, 2024, which was just less than 24 hours ago, the Saudis made it clear that they're not going to renew that contract with the United States. So the question has to be asked at this time, does that spell the end of the US dollar as the world currency? And
Well,
if it does, that's going to hurt us.
right. Well, let's see. Okay, so what we have now is, what is it, 80 to 90% of all trade around the world is traded with the US dollar.
Mhm.
And actually there's no other no other country that their currency moves around that way. to where it can be used in every country. Every country accepts this currency. Now, that's been going on for a long time. Now, like you said, there's a lot of these countries have, billions, if not trillions of dollars in reserve. So now that they don't have to use the dollar for the oil, now mind you, they're gonna have to use it for other things. You know what I mean? Because, like I said, you may be able to, you know, use whatever money that you have, whatever currency you have to purchase oil. But there is still a lot of stuff that you would still have to use the dollar to pay for. You know what I mean? That didn't open it up to where to everything. You know what I mean? Just basically dealing with Saudi Arabia right now. So, but you don't need as much. So what happens to all this extra money that they have when it was like, oh, so we don't need all this money now. So we're gonna give it back because we don't need it anymore. I mean, so just like you would go to another country and exchange your money for this money, they can do the same thing. So how does that go?
Well, what happens at that point is those dollars get repatriated back to the United States. We're talking billions of dollars that's going to be coming back. It's no longer needed. And when you repatriate the dollar, you're flooding our market with paper money that is going to devalue our current currency that we have here in the United States. And that's going to drive up inflation and it's going to drive up prices. I mean, overall, it will reduce the value of the US dollar when we repatriate all those billions of dollars.
Mm-hmm. Well, probably a lot of people right now are going to be like, well, I don't know because, right now oil hasn't shot up to $200 a barrel yet. And right now, I know here in Florida, gas has actually dropped quite a bit. It was running like 367 somewhere out like that. Now it's dropped down to like 302 in a lot of areas that I've seen. So it actually took a dip here in the past week, 2 weeks. So a lot of people was like, well, okay, well, why did it drop? If we going, if this getting ready to go on, so wouldn't it be the opposite? But I figure that that's probably more of the, how do you put it, the calm before the storm. You know what I mean? Because you can easily, they can easily tap into the reserve and actually use oil from the reserve, which would which you would use more of hours and less able to drop the price down to a certain extent. But the reserve is one thing. It's a reserve. You know what I mean? And with the reserve, you have to replenish that reserve. You know what I mean? So you can't keep taking from it and thinking that you're going to put it back. You know what I mean? So, it's not that easy. You know what I mean? So is that probably what's going on right now? Or is it just like, this part here hasn't really hit yet because it really just happened, so you really don't actually see it in the price of oil shooting up or the stock exchange taking a dip because of the currency situation, stuff like that. And then you still have people out right now that's saying like, oh, well, even if you did this, and even if they did this, it's really not gonna affect too much. Well, technically, it is going to affect it, because this is what this currency has really been backed on all these years is through oil, not only in Saudi Arabia but also here in the U.S. with all these different oil tycoons that basically, that's what they put it all up under in the first place when they took it off the gold standard. Now, my question to you is, okay, so it's no longer backed by oil. Why can't we not just go back to the gold standard? Or why didn't we not go back to the gold standard a while ago? I mean, like I said, if Nixon took this out, why didn't any other president put it back on the gold standard?
I don't understand why they didn't. They felt like it would open the situation up to more investment possibilities with the US dollar being able to be printed in massive quantities by the Federal Reserve. But sooner or later, the chickens come home to roost, which is currently what's happening now. When that money gets repatriated, when countries realize they no longer need the US dollar, it's going to take a certain amount of power away from us. We're not going to be the economic power anymore. And China is rapidly moving up on our rear end. They claim by 2030, China will be the economic power, it's not the United States. So we could be, I say we're being attacked right now economically, be knocked off as being the king of the hill.
Mm-hmm. Now, you know, this isn't the first time that the U.S. dollar has been threatened.
Hmm.
Now, I remember back a while ago when over in Libya, when Muammar Gaddafi was trying to take the dinar and make it and back it by gold and use it as the gold standard and actually start a central banking system in Libya just backing their money with gold. Now, once he tried to do that, of course, it went around across the world that this was going to be a threat for financial security around the world if he was able to do that. Matter of fact, it was who was it that said that? He's in France. Sarkozy, Nicolas Sarkozy. He was the one that initially put out that if Libya was able to do that it would be a detrimental threat to the financial security the way they had it set up. Being that the U.S. was the dominant currency, that backing this gold dinar would actually threaten it. Now, we all know what happened to Gaddafi. We all know what happened to him. I ain't even gonna go through all that, but everybody know he didn't make it. Now, and a lot of people said that the reason why he didn't make it was just for that reason, because it was a financial threat, and it was one that could, if not dealt with the right way, could have put a big hit on the U.S. dollar. So they've known for several years that any currency that came through that was backed on gold like that, problem. So why would you not resort back to that to keep that from even going on?
Doesn't make sense to me.
So the what was the other one I was gonna what was another one I was getting ready to bring up? Oh, okay. So now you have BRICS. Okay, so we've talked about BRICS several times, and exactly who was involved in BRICS, and that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Now, it hasn't really been all these other countries really out pushing BRICS on everybody. It's been China that's been out pushing everybody to come in. You know what I mean? Now, even though Russia is involved in this, every time that you hear someone talking about BRICS, it's always been the Chinese who has been talking to them, trying to get them to come over. I mean, and actually, that's how South Africa actually came over to BRICS, was through China, because China went there and basically they put a lot of money in South Africa. They built a lot of infrastructure there. They built a lot of ports and stuff like that. And generally, what they did was that they went there and they built all this stuff, and they gave them money to bail them out of a lot of stuff, and then was like, oh, okay, so we did this, and we put you on these. They give you these crazy deals where you can, you can pay this amount for 99 years, and then but after that you have to agree to let us put a base here, or agree to us to do whatever. You know what I mean? And basically what they're trying to do is that they're trying to do like the US and put bases everywhere. And so that's how South Africa even got involved in that in the first place. You know what I mean? Because normally you don't ever hear about South Africa doing too much until this started. But the main spearhead of this whole group is China. You know what I mean? So, but China also has a lot of reserve here in the U.S. though. They own a lot of stuff here in the U.S. for them to be going back and forth. So let's talk about BRICS for a minute, and just kind of give them an understanding as to what exactly it is and what it could do.
Well, to me, BRICS is almost like a trade union. They're set up. They don't want to be dealing with the problems and attitude of the United States, running control factors on them and controlling how much of our money we're willing to let them have to trade with. They're circumventing the US dollar. Any nation that joins that no longer wants to deal with problems with the United States. They want the freedom to trade and use more stronger currencies. Certain countries like China, Russia, different ones, they've been buying up gold and silver left and right to support it. Plus, Russia has a tremendous amount of oil that they export, and their value, their money is tied in with that oil. When oil is low, the value of their money is low. If oil goes high, then the value of their money is high. I mean, Venezuela's money is tied into their oil. So they want to get away from the US dollar and get into trading and not having to deal with the United States. So it's set up to actually bring down the downfall of our money, as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm. So okay, so we have 34 countries so far that has agreed to go over to this BRICS. Matter of fact, I think they have a conference. This big BRICS conference is supposed to go on in October, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
This has started back in 2017 when they first started talking about this. So why hasn't anything been done about it since then? I mean, because it seemed like to me like they knew that this could take place, but they kind of sat on their hands with it and just let it just to see what it was going to do. You know what I mean? And then now it's at the point that it could actually go into fruition. This could really happen, and now it's everybody's dashing around trying to figure out what to do next.
Well, I agree with you. They did see this coming in 2017. They knew that the petro-dollar agreement was going to expire. And I really think that they felt that our allies were going to stick with us. But right now, seeing what's going on in the world and with this inflation and stuff that's happening, I think our allies are asking themselves a question. And that question is, what's going to best suit our interests? What's going to best suit our needs? And that's the reason why they've got 34, 36 nations jumping to the BRICS side at this time.
It's crazy. Now, this could actually, if done right, I mean, if they were, if they really have this stuff planned, which we think that they do, this could be a shift in the global economic power
Almost
because
definitely.
the end of the petrodollar could mark a shift in the global economy. Um, but you have a, but then that would also make that a new reserve currency, correct?
That would be correct. And again, that hurts us. You can't have two world reserve currencies. That's just ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And we won't be able to wield the economic power that we once did. And I know China wants to be the king of the hill now, and they want their money to be the new world currency. So they're really pushing the issue because they know the more that they can accomplish, the more it's going to hurt us in the end to help bring us down.
Okay, so let me ask you this, just based on your opinion. I mean, we're not financial analysts and nothing like that. Just based on your opinion, what do you think? What do you think the U.S. should do at this point in time? I mean, being the fact that the Saudis basically done turned their back on you, and they're actually going over to. I mean, because I've seen reports where Saudi Arabia had actually agreed to go over to BRICS if that actually started. So basically, you basically turned your back on. So, what do you think the U.S. next move should be?
Boy, well, they're not going to have any other choice. I mean, if we lose the world reserve status, which we are, the petrodollar agreement is over with. I say over the next 5 years from now to 2030, the United States is going to have to sell $11 trillion a year, 11 trillion in treasuries. And if they miss that mark in any year between now and 2030, interest rates are going to soar. We're going to go into a depression. The American people are going to be hurt. So, and let me go into what treasuries are. Treasuries is basically our debt. What happens is the United States, if you go on usdebt.org, usdebtclock.org, you will see a bunch of numbers up there in under categories. And what you would notice is, as far as expenditures of the United States, we spend $7 trillion a year easily, just actually a little over that. But when you look at what we bring in a year's time, we bring in 3.8 trillion in income in a year. So we're bringing in almost half of what we're spending. And the difference, that deficit difference, is debt. We sell that debt to other nations in the form of treasuries. And different countries come in and they purchase that debt. Now, actually, if you look at what our biggest export is right now, it's our treasuries, it's our debt. That's how much of it that we're selling to other countries. And to give you an example, if I was running my household and I was spending $70,000 a year, but I was only taking in my income, total income was 38,000 a year. In less than 5 years, I'd be bankrupt. The reason why we're not bankrupt is we have found other countries, Hong Kong, Taiwan, China, Saudi Arabia, different ones are purchasing our debt on a yearly basis, which gives them a certain amount of power and insulates them against any retaliation from us. Because if we try to retaliate, they'd dump all that debt on the market, and man, it would just about collapse us. So it's hard to come back at the Saudis for jumping ship on us when the Saudis themselves own at least $166.8 billion in US debt. Some say it's as high as $1 trillion. So if you come trying to come at them, they'd dump it all at once. But in recent years, since Saudis knew that they was going to jump to BRICS, they're the number one person that's dumping US treasuries right now, with China falling in a close second. It's almost as if they're engineering our downfall. They're going to help us stumble and fall, basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that seemed like when we was talking about that earlier, it seemed to me like kind of like the kind of like insider trading, so to speak. So you go in and you buy, you get it up so high and then dump it. Like you make your money off of it, dump it, and let it drop. And that kind of seems like that's what this was. It was, you have these countries that came together, like, okay, so this is what you're gonna do. You're gonna buy this much, you're gonna buy this much, I'm gonna buy this much, and we're gonna sit here and hold it. And then when the time is right, we're gonna dump it and let it go
Now,
back.
it's true. Now, if there is no one to buy our debt, the buyer of last resort is the Federal Reserve. All they have to do is print up a bunch of money. Is it backed by anything? Probably not. But they can step in and purchase, which again gives the Federal Reserve more power over the United States. And there's nothing federal about them. They're owned by the Rothschild family. They're part of the central bank system, the world central bank system. When you say federal, you think it's part of the United States. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
So you're giving power over to outside influences to actually own us.
Right. So, we've seen a lot of reports throughout the past year where they have been talking about having this central banking system, this one banking system that was basically one global banking system. It was a digital banking system to where they basically knew every dollar you spent, what you spent it on, and all the way to the point that they could tell you what you could or could not spend your money on. Do you think that that's kind of what this is leading to? And they had to basically get the dollar so low to where they could actually do this?
Well, remember at the end of the Bretton Woods conference, people were so pressed economically and nations were war torn that they was willing to go for anything to get relief. This can trigger the CBDCs to come forward. The Federal Reserve already has a central bank digital currencies ready to come forward. And, blockchain could be triggered to come forward. Digital currencies will gain much more power than what they are now if the US dollar starts to lose its grip. We could be starting to see the early stages of fiat currencies going away forever.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah, because
mean,
I know that they're actually trying to get rid of the quote unquote paper money.
right. That's
And,
fiat.
and you've seen in several countries now, I've seen reports where people are going into stores and they would not accept their own currency. They would, if you had a bank card, handed them money, they didn't want it. But then you see, like over here, for instance, like if you go, say you go to the gas station, and now they have it to where if you use your credit card, let's say your gas is $3.40, but if you pay in cash, it's $3.20. So it kind of goes back and forth. You know what I mean? But then you have, I reported on this a while ago. You have like national parks and stuff that's here in the U.S. that does not accept cash. That you have to use a bank card or credit card or whatever in order to even go into it. They don't even accept cash. So there was another one that I seen back a while ago where you had Target, Target and Walmart that were, because they basically trying to do away with the actual cash register lines anyway, and they move more over to the self checkout. But then I heard that they were also trying to do the self checkout to where it did not accept cash. It was only going to be digital. So they're slowly trying to do away with the actual paper dollar anyway. You know what I mean? So it kind of seems like, okay, is this a part of it? You know what I mean? Because you know how like me and you was talking before, uh, when we were saying that that you keep so much money on hand just in case something goes down, that you keep your have you a certain amount, small bills, stuff like that. Well, if they get into the point that they're not even accepting paper money, what would really be the point?
And that could very well be true. But the paper, before it becomes totally worthless, it will still have some value. They're going to, between now and 2030, we're going to go into a period of tougher times. And Americans need to understand that. We just lost the petro-dollar agreement, and that was keeping our money afloat. They're going to have to understand we're going to go into tough times to bring forward the digital currencies. They're going to have to create really tough times on people to make them accept the new currency that they're going to bring forward. People would be so desperate, they'd be like, bring it on, bring it on. I need relief. And they'll be willing to go for anything to get that relief, like they did during the Bretton Woods Conference. The United States seized a lot of power. Um, I think this is a fair warning to everybody. They need to be stocking up on stuff. They need to be preparing. They need to be having money. They need to be invested in hard assets. Because hard assets, when we go into a hyperinflation period, real estate, property, gold, silver, any sort of hard asset is going to skyrocket in price. Right now, you can get it cheaper. Later, you probably pay 3, 4 times the amount for it. So
Mm-hmm.
right now, you need time to stock up on things and stock up your food pantry, different things, because we're going to go into a tough period and people are going to have to tighten their belts. And it's going to be a little tighter than what they're expecting. The standard of living is not going to be the same. It will go down because prices will go higher and your money's not going to stretch as far. Uh, this can affect people's pensions. It will have a major impact on pensions. Uh, Inflation could become hyperinflation. I mean, Argentina, dozen of eggs, $200 because of hyperinflation. It's hard to save money in a hyperinflated period. I mean, you heard at the end of World War II, people were taking a wheelbarrow full of money to buy a loaf of bread. I mean, things could get that bad. Uh, so in order to bring in the new currency, they're going to have to let it get that bad. And that's what I want people to be prepared for and start setting things up, because prices are going to skyrocket before they bring in that new digital currencies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd seen something just here the other day where they were talking about um, um, with the interest rates. Like right now, they left the interest rates where it was, and that the Fed basically said that inflation, um, and they were showing how $100, if you bought $100 worth of groceries 2 years ago, and $100 groceries worth now, the way the interest is, the way everything has grown, how much less you were able to get with that amount of money. So with everything that's eventually going to, well, I mean, as you see yourself, everything's getting higher. Everything's higher, and it seems like it's getting higher, but the actual amount of food, like say for instance, I noticed the other day, um, we were looking at ice cream, a tub of ice cream, and it was back before it was like it was running roughly $4 for this particular brand, around about $4, and you got 'cause you know how you can get like a half, and you can get like the actual the big gallon tub or whatever. But then when you on the bottom, you know how it has the writing on the bottom that tells you how much is there. It was half of what it used to be, but the same price. So we was, and I didn't really notice it until I just happened to look at it, and I was like, hold on, how is it that I'm paying the same price for this, but it's actually half of what it was before? And I just happened to have had another one of the same brand that I had bought at two different stores, and exact same size. It looked exactly the same, but when you looked at the actual amount that was in it, this one was two, this one was 1.5. But you're paying the exact same amount. So it's like they're giving you less, but you're paying more for it.
It's called shrinkflation. That's what they call it. That's the term for it. But I do want to reemphasize, at this point, between now and 2030, we have to sell 11 trillion in treasuries. We got a year of our debt. We got to find buyers to buy that. At any point in time, if we fail to hit that mark, interest rates are going to climb. Now, in 1984, I don't know if people remembered, under Reagan, the interest rates on home loans got as high as 18%. I think credit cards were around 21 to 24%. And if you can remember how high the interest was, it was like you make a payment and all of it was going to interest. Hardly anything was going to principal back then.
Mm-hmm.
Those times is a very real reality. Again, if we don't hit that 11 trillion a year mark, people need to be tightening their belts now before they're forced to have to tighten their belts.
Yeah. 11 trillion is not that's not an easy, that's not an easy mark, especially when you just said that they bring in what, 3 trillion?
Yep. 3.8 trillion a year is what we bring in.
Okay, so you bring in 3 trillion, but you got to sell 11 trillion.
Almost 11 a year. Since
You know
we
what I mean?
lost
So you basically got to sell 3 times what you brought in.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's going to be impossible.
Our debt's going to be that high. I mean, we're not bringing in no revenue from the petro-dollar agreement no more. I mean, that's a major impact. This should be the number one story in the news right now. This thing about Trump getting away with a felony, that's a cover story. That's a distraction to get you not to see how bad our economy is almost about to get wrecked. I mean, they're going to have to do some major manipulation here to try to get around this. And if they can't get around it, you can bet it's going to come back on the American taxpayer.
Right. Now, once this does actually get around, this is going to be the first day they're going to be like, okay, well, Biden did this. Now, now we got to let this be known that this isn't something that Biden did. This isn't something that Trump did. This isn't something Obama did. You know what I mean? This was done 50 years ago.
50 years ago, that's right.
That has now, came to, basically has come to an end.
And again, they saw this, they knew it was coming to an end in 2017. But I guess they thought that through their own ego, that our allies were going to stick with us no matter what. And BRICS has got what, 36 countries wanting to join. 34 has joined. They got 2 more trying to join. They control over 40% of the gross national product of the world. Those 36 countries do. So you're talking major imbalance that's about to happen here. And it's going to come back. Go ahead.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Because you said that those countries there has what, 36%?
It has 40%.
40%
of the world's production.
Okay, now how many countries was that?
36 of them.
Okay, 36 countries, 40%.
Yeah.
Now, the U.S. alone in the world GDP is 24% by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes 34 countries to come up with 40% when the U.S. got 24% by themselves. Now this just isn't oil though. This is everything.
Everything, right?
And which would probably actually grow a little bit because you notice here within the past year and a half, you know, the government has offered a lot of tax breaks for these companies to come back into the U.S. And a lot of these companies are leaving China. I've seen a documentary on that a lot of these countries that were that were in China that were U.S. companies and stuff like that, they were talking about the, the treatment and the uh, excessive fines and penalties that they made them pay all the time for different stuff that they're actually leaving China, going to other countries like Mexico, Vietnam, um, and was and they were talking about how much money China would lose by these companies leaving, like they've been leaving, but they've been leaving left and right.
Mhm.
So um, so it's not like they're sitting in a position where it was like, okay, we got everything over here, because a lot of people are actually leaving. I mean, a lot of these companies are actually packing up and getting the hell up out of China and going to these uh, these smaller countries to where they're able to um, not have to go through that extra that they was going through over there, because they said that especially American companies like Apple and stuff like that that were they were paying like ridiculous amounts to be in China.
Mhm.
And so I guess the US government, it was like, okay, well, you bring it back over here and we'll give you so many years tax break, you know, not have to pay taxes for so many years, stuff like that, to bring them, you know what I mean, to get them to come back to the US. So it's kind of like this back and forth thing that's going on. You know what I mean? I I'm looking at all this stuff here, and when you look at it, it's like, okay, wow, we're about to take a hit. And we know we're about to take a hit. Okay. But on the other side is that I don't see it, I don't see it going the way they think it's gonna go. What I mean by they is China, Russia, India, South Africa. I don't see it going the way they think it's gonna go.
Well, I'm gonna
Um,
say, sorry, go ahead.
being the fact that, you know, one thing that you know about the US is that they always have a trick in the bag. They keep a trick bag. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like you looking at it and you're like, okay, so you knew about this, so why did you not do anything about it? But then too, you sitting back and like, oh, you know, they could be playing chess. They could just be sitting back waiting for them to make the move for them to pounce on. You know what I mean? Like this whole thing dealing with Saudi, they've been in talks about this well before this end date. They knew this date was coming. They've been in talks about this. You know, so um, I mean, like for real, hell, if the U.S. was there strictly on a military basis to keep Saudi Arabia guarded, why couldn't they take that same military and take their ass over, take and take the shit?
Well,
They could if they wanted to.
that's the question right now, because us losing that petrodollar agreement, that represents a clear and present danger to our us remaining an economic power right now. Uh, will the United States accept that and have to sell 11 trillion in debt a year, or are we going to go back to gunboat diplomacy and war is the option to keep us in power? You know, that's the question that's got to be asked right now. Which way are they going to go with this?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, it's gonna be something. It's gonna be something. I mean, it's crazy to fathom that they would just they're not gonna just sit on their hands and just let it happen. You know, and I think last week show we was talking about that. I said, you know, we may not we may not want war, but I think you're gonna get it. I think you're gonna get it because I think if you now, I'm not saying that we sitting here telling people like, hey, we're gonna do X, Y, Z if you don't do this. I think 1,000% that the U.S. is going around and they doing everything humanly possible to work some stuff out to keep it from going to that point. But just like anybody else, you, me, and anybody else, you can try for so long, and you can try diplomacy. You can try to, let's let cooler heads prevail here and let's work this out. And then eventually, though, you be like, you know what? This what you want to do? No more talking. And then all hell breaks loose. You know, the U.S. has 750 bases in 80 countries. 750. I mean, I think that, mind you, oil may be the biggest thing that everybody may think that we have here. I think our military is even bigger than that. I mean, so it's not like, okay, you did this, now you think you got me. Okay. I'm gonna keep trying to work this out with you. But I'm not gonna beg you. I'm gonna work it out with you. I'm gonna see what you want to do. Now, if you keep saying no, okay, cool. Keep saying no. This is gonna happen. And they ain't gonna tell them it's gonna happen, it's just gonna happen. But we may not want war. I'll be the first one to say that I don't want to see sending our men and women to fight, and go to war again. I mean, I'm ex-military, so of course, I don't want to see nobody go to war. But I think based on the situation that's at hand and the stuff that's going on, and the stuff that mainstream is not even telling you about, it's gonna pop off. It's not gonna be a choice. You're gonna have to. What do you think?
Well, I agree with you on that. And if not that, then we're going to have to bring our allies back to us. And if they don't come back to us, then I can see where we're going to be destabilizing governments and stuff again. I mean, people that didn't want to cooperate as part of OPEC, when the Saudis signed a deal with us, the ones that didn't want to play ball, they all ended up in civil wars and having internal conflicts and destabilized governments behind not playing ball with the petro-dollar agreement. And later, a bunch of them got on board with it. So there's going to definitely be some power plays put into place. But right now, I think the Americans need to be prepared to stock up on stuff. And because there's going to end up being shortages. If war's an inevitability, then they better be stocking up on things, because most of the stuff we make all the way down to toilet paper and toothpaste is made overseas. And there's going to be product shortages. I mean, I learned the hard way from working at GM. I never worked anywhere where you get laid off work and it would take 8 weeks before you got your first check. I learned the hard way to build up a food pantry and to have a certain amount of money in reserve to last through the storm until the checks started rolling back in. And I would tell everybody right now, things is going to get tight. Companies will probably cut more people. You already had a show on the layoffs that's going to happen. As people start to hold on to money, the economy slows down. When the economy slows down, retail stores and businesses are going to be shutting down, which makes even more unemployed people. So you're going to have to tighten that belt. And if you know it's coming, you can prepare. If you don't know it's coming, you're going to get blindsided. And this show is to put a warning out there to you that this is coming and there's nothing that's going to stop it.
Mm-hmm. You know, one of the previous shows that we had done, um, we were talking about the layoffs, all the layoffs that was happening in Google and Tesla and stuff like that. And I had found out during that time that they said that in 2024, they said that every company that employs more than 100 people would have some form of layoff this year. From the time I did that report, they were already at 1 million people that had already been laid off at that point. And there's different sites that you can go on that will tell you whether or not your company is planning on laying off, because they have to inform the state within, I think it was 60 days. Yeah, within 60 days that they were going to start doing layoffs at this time. And there were sites that you could go to, that you could go in and punch the name of your company in, and it would tell you whether or not they were on that list for your particular state. So a lot of this stuff has been going on. I mean, like they've been, who was it? Let me see, last year in 23, it was 96% last year. It's 94% this year. So you have over 1 million people right now that's already laid off, that's trying to find employment, you know, any way that they can. And this is just going to continue to spiral that way, you know, especially when you have these retail store, a lot of these restaurants and stuff like that has decided to shut down in different locations and stuff like that. It's already getting tight without this going on. It's already getting tight. So you can imagine the squeeze that you're going to get if nothing is done about this. You know what I mean? And I think once you get enough people and, you know, going on about this and the squeeze starts hitting the 1% as well as it's hitting everybody else, they're going to have to do something. I mean, it's inevitable. It has to happen. You know what I mean? And there's no way that you can say that, okay, we're going to come in and we're going to basically bankrupt you. We're going to make your currency nothing, and we're going to take over, and you're not going to do a thing about it. Ain't no way in hell that's going to happen. No way in hell. They'll blow this whole world up before they do that. There's no way they'll do it. But like I said, I hope that doesn't happen. I mean, I hope that they actually come to some kind of terms as to how they're going to fix this. You know what I mean? I really think they need to go back to the gold standard for real. And I'm pretty sure it's not hard to do. They just have to do it. You know what I mean? But you now that when you pulled it off from the beginning and figure like, oh, well, we can pull it off here. We can put it in oil. I mean, I'm pretty sure that they didn't know that it was going to be like it, you know, that the oil was going to boom like it was. That was kind of like a Hail Mary throw. And it just happened to have been called, and it worked. You know what I mean? And it worked for 50 years. You know what I mean? But you had to, man, you got to think though, like you knew that this shit was going to end. What is it that you have in place? There's no way you can say like you had nothing in place for this. You knew it was coming. You knew it was coming. You knew that you've been talking to them. You knew they probably on some shady shit over there anyway. You already know that. You know what I mean? So I know you got to have something else in place. So I'm just waiting to see what's going to happen. I mean, because I know there's no way possible that that they literally sit there on their hands and this has went through and they don't have nothing else in place. They got to have something else in place. But you know what? This has been this has been interesting. Like I said last night when we was talking about this, we decided to do this. Um, I mean, I was up to probably about 2:30 this morning looking up stuff, and I know you was up. You had three, 4 pages and stuff. I had about 3 pages here as well. Um, like you said this morning, the more you start digging into stuff and finding out stuff, like it kind of turns your stomach. You know
Yeah,
what I
it
mean?
did.
Thinking like, wow, like this is a lot. You know what I mean? And especially being the fact that as of right now, like mainstream's not even talking about it.
Yeah.
They ain't even brought it up. You know what I mean? But
Yeah, they're
everywhere
too,
else is talking about it.
yeah, they're trying to distract you right now from seeing what's actually happening.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen news reports in the UK. I've seen Australian news reports. Um, I've seen uh, news reports over in uh, was it Britain? Yeah, and I seen reports over in Canada. They they were all talking about it, but I didn't find out one news station here that said anything about it at all. I mean, because
Mhm.
right now, like you said, the big distraction, like they always do,
Mhm.
they're the only thing that they talking about is Trump. I mean, really ain't too much more to say about that. You know what I mean? It is what it is. You know what I mean? Everybody get caught. They ain't nothing need to talk about that. I mean, but I mean, how long you gonna keep that going? But while they keeping that going, all this other stuff is going right around the wayside. All this stuff is happening. So, um, if I was to say anything, I would tell you guys a couple things. Number one, get your household together. However you feel you need to get your household together. Two, if you do have a little money to the side, get you some gold. Get you some gold or silver. You know what I mean? Have it. Have it. Don't like invest in a company that has it. Get your hands on it. Um, and like really take some of these steps that we're telling you in mind and put this stuff together. Have your plan set up for your house, for your house, for your kids, for your family, whatever. Put you something in place because it's it's gonna get crazy. It really is. Whether they're gonna tell you or not, it's gonna get crazy. But we've been on here for what we got hour 10. Um, we're gonna cut this loose. I gotta get ready to go. I'm heading to DC. Um, actually, I'm heading to DC to try to talk to some of these congressional members uh, about this show. Actually, um, so I'm heading there here in a couple hours. Um, hopefully next week when I come back, I have some news and be able to tell you about uh, what I seen, what I ran into, who I was able to talk to, whatever. So we're gonna so I'm gonna hit the road here in just a couple hours here. But Aaron, once again, brother, I thank you. Um, you want to end this out with you and
Okay.
to everybody that's watching, keep watching them. Like I said, like, follow, share, subscribe, hit the button, tell the people, tell your family, tell your friends. Watch the show. Okay, it's free. Watch the show. Pay attention. Pay attention. Don't let this hit you in the face when you already knew it. So until next week, I'm out. Aaron, I'm gonna let you go ahead and close it out, and then we're gonna end this.
The best thing I can say right now is stockpile some money, stockpile some food, water provisions around your house. Don't let it, when we go into this tight period, it's going to occur between now and 2030. Don't let it ever happen to where you have to make a choice between paying your bills or eating. If you got a food pantry fully stocked, food will not be an issue for you. You can always focus your resources on covering them bills. And if it's any way possible, don't be running up high credit card debts or anything right now because of what we're about to go into. If they don't make that interest, if they can't sell the U.S. debt, then interest rates are going to climb and you'll get buried if you're taking on too much debt right now. If you can pay anything off to free up your cash resources, do so. But use as much common sense as you can. Buy only what you need, not what you want. And I'm going to end at that.
All right. That's a good one. Well, we'll see you all in 7 days. Appreciate you all like always. Much love to you. And we'll see y'all next week.
One day I'm gonna be everything I wanna be. I don't let it get the most of me. One day I'm gonna be free. I wanna be everything I'm gonna be. My future right in front of me. One day I'm gonna be free. I wanna be free, then let me be free. One day I'm